So I'm on the mountain, reap 'em in the valley. So I'm on the mountain, reap 'em in the valley. So I'm on the mountain, reap 'em in the valley.
While it's been assumed that Thoreau went to the woods to live deliberately just because he wanted to do that, we understand that he wanted to go there anyway because he wanted time to and a place that was quiet to do his writing, where he generated his first draft of Walden and wrote A Week on the Concord and Merrimack Rivers. But there's another story that was written up in the Concord Journal some years ago that when he was 1 year younger than when he went to the woods to live, he was fishing with a friend at Fairhaven Bay, not too far from Walden, and set a fire in a post to cook his fish and doused it with water, except that fires and stumps are hard to put out, and it didn't quite get out, and it caused a forest fire that burned many acres with the wind blowing toward the town. And fortunately, the wind shifted and the fire was put out before it got there. But it was assumed that when he was walking through town for some time after that, people would be saying behind his back, "Firebug," and that perhaps he wanted to live deliberately somewhere else for a while.
Not a very auspicious start for the man who would go on to write the American classic Walden. 200 years ago, Henry David Thoreau was born and lived nearly all his life here in Concord. To celebrate, the Freedom's Way National Heritage Area, with support from the National Park Service, is working to create a recreational trail in the spirit of Thoreau's 1842 essay, A Walk to Wachusett.
We're primarily using existing trails, and we know that the trails that we're using are not going to be exactly the same trails that Thoreau walked upon, because many of those trails right now are roads and highways. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to, if you will, balance how a route might evolve in the spirit of Thoreau, and really take a look at how we might combine existing trails, where we would need to add potential new connections, and then how we can weave those together within the fabric of the existing communities.
The event was a multi-day trek of the preliminary trail route, accompanied by the Massachusetts Walking Tour, and took 5 days to complete. The Mass Walking Tour hiked all 5 days and performed concerts each night.
I've been doing the Massachusetts Walking Tour since 2010, and originally it was to highlight arts and culture in the individual towns across the state. And what we found out is we were walking on roads most of the time to get in between our towns, and we found out that we had a really natural partnership with trail volunteers and people who maintain organized green spaces across the state too, because they wanted us to help them raise awareness of trails that we had in our own backyard.
We've actually worked with Freedom's Way, who are kind of the head organization for today's event. We worked with them in the past through the Massachusetts Trails Conference, and they just love what we do, and they've had us on the hook now for probably close to a year for coming out and kind of introducing the community to the Thoreau Trail. So we're here to provide some music and some lightheartedness on the trail and entertainment in the evenings.
The event kicked off with an opening ceremony at Walden Pond with dignitaries and music performed by the Mass Walking Tour.
Thank you for coming this morning. On behalf of the Freedom's Way National Heritage Area, I'd like to welcome you all here at the launch of the Thoreau Trail Project. Freedom's Way is one of 49 national heritage areas throughout the country. National heritage areas are designed to tell a uniquely American story, and we work in partnership with the National Park Service. Freedom's Way encompasses 45 communities in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, so it's a really large geography. And as an organization, among other things, our goal is to do projects and programs that interpret and educate the public about the unique stories within Freedom's Way, particularly around its nature, culture, and history. So for us, Thoreau is, shall we say, a grand slam. He crosses over all the boundaries of the work that we're designed to do. And this project, which we've done in close partnership with the National Park Service, is designed as an exploration of the route that Thoreau took when he walked from Walden to Wachusett.
Well, it is my privilege on behalf of all of us at DCR to welcome you to your Walden Pond. the birthplace of the environmental movement and a place that was made famous by Henry David Thoreau, who lived here for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. And as you know, people come here from all over the world and from just down the street to enjoy this beautiful property. And we are really proud of this property and all of the properties that we steward on behalf of the people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And as Patrice said, we are starting here at Walden and we're ending at Mount Wachusett, another spectacular property that is managed in stewardship for all of you. So we're really excited. I'm dressed in my walking clothes, my Thoreau shirt here. So this is not the official way to wear our uniform, but I hope you'll forgive me that I'm showing off my Thoreau. And you know, I love walking, so I'm personally excited to be part of this. But also in this very busy world, sometimes it's really great to take a step back. And I hope that as we go on this exploratory adventure and we really create this Thoreau trail, that we're not only creating a trail that might have pavement and dirt and stone, but it's a trail that really helps us travel, you know, deep within our soul and really feel that connection with nature that Thoreau had. So I want to wish you, on behalf of all of us at the DCR, a very safe walk and a very inspiring walk. Thanks so much.
Boy, you offered invention. You know, Henry David Thoreau said that the future is worth expecting, but the present is really worth experiencing. And we don't get to do that at a human pace anymore. We're all running around connected to electronics that move us and ping us and say, move on, shut up, get to the next thing. And there isn't a more magnificent way to experience a place or people than a walk, and a long walk. And you're going to have entertainment for people who are walking with you. God bless them. So have a tremendous time. And my hat's off to everyone who's involved in this project.
What a privilege to join you all this morning. And I'm going to start a little differently. In my hands are a copy of The Maine Woods, an edition printed in 1950, and also, maybe also appropriately enough, A Week on the Concord and Merrimack Rivers, an edition printed in 1966, the year after I was born. These two books belong to Nelson and Flora Lepin, my grandparents, and were given to me at about the age of 8. And I guess you could say that both my grandparents and Thoreau were early influencers on my love of the natural landscape and of hiking and paddling. So during this bicentennial year of Thoreau, there's a lot going on. The whole world is taking notice of the achievements of Concord's own natural philosopher. However, it's the sights of nature for which Thoreau is most famous for, and why we're gathered here today, this morning at Walden Pond. Momentarily, a few of you are going to depart to another site made famous by the pen of Thoreau, Mount Wachusett. The idea of a permanent walking trail from here to Mount Wachusett is not a done deal yet, but it's an incredibly exciting thing to think about. So wishing all of you hiking over the next 6 days safe and happy trails.
Good morning. I want to add my welcome to that of everybody else on behalf of the Board of Directors of Freedom's Way National Heritage Area. It was interesting listening to Superintendent Dunn's comments because I actually spent part of this past weekend going through one of my parents' bookshelves and found a very old copy of Walden, which I believe had belonged to my grandmother. So I put together a few words. There are many literary references in here, so if you want a challenge, see how many of them you can catch. I may not have even caught them all. But anyways, here it goes. Are you brave enough to go for a walk? Seek sincere experiences that symbolize the path of life. Take the road less traveled. Avoid the engineered highway and carefully curated tour. Go for a walk in the woods or into the wild, even if it is along the abandoned rail bed through the town forest or the wildness within. Go among trees and walk the one hill of your life. Take the road that goes on and on through both Lothlorien and Mordor. Follow the hidden paths that run west of the moon and east of the sun. Wander home. Walk at least 4 hours a day to fill 44 or more years with purpose and meaning. Then the ripples of your life may shake empires, develop new scientific disciplines, and inspire wilderness mystics. Walk and see the world more clearly. Thoreau admonished, possibly the day will come when the landscape will be partitioned off into so-called pleasure grounds, in which a few will take a narrow and exclusive pleasure only, when fences shall be multiplied and man-traps and other engines invented to confine men to the public road, and walking over the surface of God's earth shall be construed to mean trespassing on some gentleman's grounds. To enjoy a thing exclusively is commonly to exclude yourself from the true enjoyment of it. Let us improve our opportunities then, before the evil days come. Walk and so preserve access to the land and its experiences. Prepare to saunter. Leave Ur of the Chaldees and Haran and head for the promised land. Embrace vagrancy, for only the homeless can always be at home. Don't be a faint-hearted crusader. Undertake a persevering, never-ending enterprise. As Thoreau said, we should go forth on the shortest walk, perchance, in the spirit of undying adventure. Borrowing from Jesus, who made appearances on the roads to Jerusalem, Emmaus, and Damascus, if you are ready to leave father and mother, brother and sister, and wife and child and friends, and never see them again, if you have paid your debts and made your will and settled all your affairs and are a free man, then you are ready for a walk. Let's walk.
Thank you guys for being here today. Before we take off on this walk, we're going to sing one last song. We've been brought on as an organization that's been functioning since 2010 called the Massachusetts Walking Tour. We're a group that's been organizing free community concerts across the state to highlight arts and culture in all the towns of Massachusetts, as well as raising awareness of green spaces throughout the state. This is our 8th year. This is our 2nd leg this year. We already have done 10 dates across the Blackstone Valley and celebrated trails like the Southern New England Trunkline Trail. And we're supported by grants through the Massachusetts Cultural Council. We really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this event. Our very first year in 2010, we've actually brought copies of Walden, thinking that as we walked from our events, we would have time to read. We found very quickly that wasn't the truth. So we're going to sing one song we've been singing for the last couple of years. This is a song called We'll Camp a Little While in the Wilderness, which is a North Carolina tradition. We'll camp a little while in the wilderness. In the wilderness, in the wilderness. We'll camp a little while in the wilderness. Then we'll be going home. Then we'll be going home. Then we'll be going home. We're all making ready. Then we'll be going home. Sisters, are you ready? Ready, oh, ready. Sisters, are you ready? Then we'll be going home. Then we'll be going home. Then we'll be going home. Sisters, are you ready? Then we'll be going In the wilderness, in the wilderness. We'll camp a little while in the wilderness. Then we'll be going home. Then we'll be going home. Then we'll be going home. We're all making ready. Then we'll be going home. Thank you.
And with that, the walk started. It may have been a rainy day, but that did nothing to dampen the enthusiasm of the walkers. We were led by Bob White, chair of the Concord Trails Committee, and our guide for the next 10 miles. Bob took us through conservation land and Thoreau landmarks, sharing his vast knowledge of the area and of Thoreau himself.
Thoreau did this from Ralph Waldo Emerson's house on Rhodes, and it was about 35, 38 miles. That today would be not a very enjoyable route because it's all with automobiles. The plan for this is to be in conservation lands, which means we're stringing together properties that are way off the route he took and will be more like 60 miles. So the properties will be Concord and Acton conservation lands, Concord Land Conservation Trust, Walden Woods Project, and of course the state reservation here at Walden.
The route started at the visitor center at Walden Pond and went around the pond by his cabin site.
The place where the cabin site is was Emerson's woodlot. It had been completely logged out 15 years before Thoreau came here, and so everything you see would have been like blueberry bushes and low growth regeneration. It's no surprise that one of his contributions was succession forestry, where when one species comes down, it's replaced by another and another and another.
Of Walden Pond, I learned the following.
It's a 6-acre kettle hole, glacially formed, that's 100 feet deep in the center, and one of the deepest kettle hole ponds in the state. And Thoreau measured it, both the depth and the size, while he was living here in his cabin for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. This whole area here was given to the town. It belonged to the Emerson and another family his daughter married into. I forgot the name. They gave 80 acres. Nobody owned the pond. That's a state thing, but although the land surrounding it belonged to Emerson, so he gave it to the state. And that's what started this reservation. At each of the properties that the town of Concord has, there is an icon or some remembrance of what used to be there. And in fact, on the other side of the railroad that we just heard go by is Concord Land Conservation Trust property, but as you walk along, you'll see an oval track off to one side, overgrown with trees now. That's the only remainder of what used to be an excursion park that the Fitchburg Railroad developed here and operated for 35 years. It's hard to believe that in this peaceful place there were thousands of people who had come here on weekends to go bathing. There was a bathhouse, there was boating. On the other side of the tracks there was a dining hall and a dance hall and a baseball field and a racetrack for bicycles, which is the only thing left that you can see now, and that's what's in the woods.
From there, we continued through to Madison Field, best known as the site of the water tower.
So here's the stave water tower that was extensively renovated. It was there was a pump, and it pumped water into it, and this was used as the water source for a huge cow barn. As many as 300 head of cattle were here when the Madison family owned this area.
And for those of you who don't remember who the Madisons were in Concord history,
they were just a local family who did farming. Concord has a rich farming background, and as you can see, the conservation lands put into conservation are often leased back to the farmers to keep them in functioning. But this is the icon for this Madison Farm conservation area. This particular area is noted for nesting ground birds, bobolinks in particular. I'm not a birder, and I don't know if I'd know a bobolink if I saw one. They're in here somewhere. There are a lot of wild flowers in here that are good for butterflies. See the yellow house over there? That's the Charles Miles house, was built about 1700. And Charles Miles was captain of the militia, Minutemen, and participated in April 75 of the bridge. The family farmed 300 acres in this area just 4 years after the town of Concord was founded, which 1639 would have been. And when he was finished with the battle at the bridge and chasing him back to Charlestown, he got together 60 more militiamen, and they went to Fort Ticonderoga, which is a fur piece. I don't know how, I hope they had horses, but to help defend that. And then when he was older, he was a hog grave. Well, people raised pigs a lot, and they got loose. He would arbitrate between people who'd had their gardens routed out by wild or loose pigs, and take the pig back where it belonged. And he was also a constable and founded a school here. You can see the horse farm up here, which is nice. Farther on is the Concord Country Club. So it's nice country to be walking in.
Our next stop was to the old rifle range.
The section we're walking in here is the old rifle range, which is a piece of many of the many conservation lands that were put together in Concord.
Wait, a historic rifle range in Concord?
The Massachusetts General Court in 1901 mandated that all towns with militias should develop rifle ranges for training. And so Concord did that, and in a few years had this functioning, and the militia trained here with their rifles. Soon after that was the build up to World War I, and it was used extensively by men who were bound for the European theater of World War I. And after World War I, it was abandoned because it was determined that the modern weapons of the day required something more sophisticated, and this wasn't appropriate anymore. So it sort of turned over to the town. The town just kept it, and at one point it was a dump, and eventually became put into conservation. And that's what we have today.
We were then off to Rogers Farm.
When they got here, their name was Rodegary, and they Americanized. But they've had greenhouses there, and this whole section we're going to, though, has some historic significance because this brook right here is called Second Division Brook. In 20 years after the founding of Concord, of course, they were all English planters. That's who lived here. Their sons were now of age when they needed to strike out on their own, and so they had a second division of property. And so I wasn't able to find out how the name for the brook got second division. I don't know if it's a dividing line for somebody or what, but anyway, the second division name is from that second division of land. So this dam, we believe, was used for a sawmill. Farther up the brook on Harrington Avenue, there's another dam, and it had the name of a sawmill on this old map from 18-something, and this just had SM sawmill. So we think that's what it is, but there's no other information about it. The brook that we went over the bridge on used to come through here, and the dam held it, and this was that whole area here is lined with granite rocks. I tried to put a post in to hold this in place, and it's solid. So this whole thing was built to take the water away from spilling over the dam without eroding off to the Wachusett River. So the Wachusett River was used, it has one of the higher differences between the origin point and the end point, and therefore had some power behind it, and was dammed at many locations along its length, used for power for mills of various kinds. We'll see when we get out here, there's an Italianate brick building, which is the Damon Mill, and it was a textile mill for many years, and it used the power of the river. It's now an office park. Now the route that we walk turns left here and just goes Main Street. That way. And we have, at this point, about 5 miles left. 4 or 5 miles left to get to the destination for the first day. And that's day one.
If you've been stealing, you better quit your stealing. If you've been stealing, you better quit your stealing. If you've been stealing, you better quit your stealing. You're gonna reap just what you sow. So I'm on the mountain, reaping in the valley.